streaming. I'll start streaming now.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I'm ready. I'm doing my own thing. You're good. I'm just emailing or messaging this link to somebody.
Okay. So you might be able to find the stream because we are live. I'm here with Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're
Sorry.
live. We're live. You can find the stream even now if you want to find it and share it or whatever you want it to do.
Oh, I shared that with them. Yeah. So let's find it.
I'm not sure how to point you to it. Just go to my channel and see if you can find it.
There it is. Okay, it came up. I just had to refresh.
Okay.
Perfect. Oh man, that is cropped. Man, my webcam sucks. I hope I can get a new one. Anyway,
someone will send you one, I'm sure.
Hopefully.
So I like to start just by asking the guest to tell a little bit about background. So how were you raised? Did you have any religion in your life as a child?
Absolutely.
So just talk about the voyage up until today. You said you're 29 years old, so that's a lot of ground to cover, but just give the highlights.
Yeah, so born and raised in Ohio. Nothing too exciting. I was raised Christian, I want to say, if I remember the exact denomination, Lutheran, I believe. It was a Lutheran church. My grandma was hyper religious. I literally have 5 boxes of Bibles from her, all written in with her own notes and things hidden inside and all kinds of stuff. So very, very religious background. But I was kicked out of Sunday school at 6 years old, and then eventually kicked out of the church we went to, mostly for kind of being a smart aleck. I'm not sure if I can cuss on here at all, but I'll try not to. And also for asking too many questions. And then, yeah, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't even now call myself atheist. I'm not saying that I believe there is a God. I'm also not saying I believe there isn't. In my worldview, it doesn't really matter. I've always been under the premise that if there is a God, or if the universe is God, or whatever, it doesn't affect me. I mean, it's it's there or it isn't. I'm going to live my life either way. Now, if a religion is true, that could obviously affect things, but that's a whole nother topic. I don't conform to any one religion. I'm not religious at all. And yeah, I'm just kind of a regular dude. I'm engaged, got a kid, climb cell towers for a living.
Oh, do you?
Mm-hmm.
Installing hardware?
Anything from repairing, installing, building towers, taking them down. Just depends.
Is there any truth to the 5G conspiracy theories?
Well, I can tell you this. I spend an enormous amount of time right next to them, and I'm perfectly fine. Well, other than being an idiot, but that's unrelated. No, there's not. The thing is, the amount of power they give out is so minimal. You can literally hug them while they're turned on, and nothing's going to happen. Now, there are microwave radios, dishes, whatever you want to call it, up there that, yes, technically, if you were to sit in front of one, you can kind of feel some warmth. There is things that'll happen. But at the end of the day, it's just light. That's all it is. It's not, when people say radiation, that is technically true, but it's not radiation as in like a nuclear power plant or an atomic bomb. It's not the same thing. It's just light. It's just a form of light that we can't see that carries a signal. It's no different. You have 5G. If you have Wi-Fi, you have it in your house at a much higher level and more directed. And yeah, it doesn't affect you, just like the towers up and won't affect you either.
I grew up like in the 70s, 80s, and I remember accidentally putting some metal in the microwave and it would spark, and I had to shut the microwave off. Today, I don't know what happened, but now I put metal bowls, stainless steel bowls in the microwave. I put all kinds of metal in the microwave. It doesn't have any adverse effects. Do you know anything about what happened? Like, did they change the technology or?
So microwaves today are not as, I wouldn't say not as powerful, but they're built with a lot more safe precautions on them. Now, if you take up bald tin foil or aluminum foil and put it in there, you will still get that spark. A stainless steel bowl is different. It depends on the type of metal. It depends on where it can arc from. There are things that will still arc in a microwave.
Sharp surfaces.
But at the end of the day, a microwave, literally all it does is agitate water molecules. That's it. It doesn't throw radiation at things. It's just, it makes water molecules go like this and shake really fast, and that's what heats up things.
Okay.
And you obviously have water molecules in your body, so if you were near that microwave, you would feel the heat or potentially worse effects.
I always felt a little bit weird because all the conspiracy theorists say that it's not good to eat microwaved food, but I just love it. I love the heat from the microwave food. Like I blast the hell out of it. And it's just my favorite thing with food and drink is that it's hot. I like when it's hot. So your friend Ian Chen official said hi.
Oh, what's up, Ian? Wow, you really jumped in quick. That's who I sent the link to.
Okay, cool. So would you be comfortable calling yourself a non-theist? Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, I mean, I always, to put a label on it is difficult for me. I try to, I guess, say I'm agnostic because I just fall back to, I have no idea. I really don't. But I also don't care that much. I mean, it's just, I love talking about religion and God and everything. I find it fascinating. But at the end of the day, as I said, it just doesn't affect me. It doesn't, if there's a God out there, it's not going to change how I view the world. I care about me and mine, and that's about it. Like I said, if there's a religion that's true, then that's different. That obviously could affect me.
Yeah. I think everyone knows that I believe in God and that I believe there's one true religion. It's Catholicism. So I don't really need to say that. It's just sort of like, hey, I'm saying it more for the sake of God's, just so I don't insult God by letting that slide past without sort of pointing out that I do believe in God and I do believe that there's one true religion. But, I was atheist for 25 years of my adult life, and we're all on a journey, and, I don't judge anyone. Like, you just deal with the facts that you have, and you think about things in your own way in the middle of your busy life with your 3-year-old child and your fiance. So you're going to, to the extent that you love the truth and you seek the truth, I think you'll find the truth. Would you say that you love the truth?
Yeah. But again, I would say that you and I, or to be less specific, I would say me and people who fall under, a specific religion, we find a truth means different things to us. Like when people say they find the truth in religion, I get that. I do. But the problem is, for me, truth needs some kind of evidence. It needs preferably proof, but if not proof, a great scientific theory and evidence will do just as well. To where, to me, a book, it just doesn't do it. I mean, a lot of people claim, so just say the Bible. I'm not even going after one religion here. It's just obviously that's going to be the most common thing we both understand. It's supposed to be the word of God, but it's at the end of the day, it was written by people. It's not. I mean, they can claim that it was, that they heard God or he told them or showed them whatever, but it was still just written by dudes like you and me.
Yeah. I did a whole episode recently on the Bible, how we don't have the Bible. No one's ever seen the Bible because we don't have the autographs. We don't have the actual writings of the human authors. But nonetheless, because I'm not a Bible alone Christian, I'm a Catholic. So in the Catholic Church, we're a little bit different from the other Christian communities because we have the authority, we have God Almighty who, in the Trinity, the second person of the Holy Trinity, incarnated, took on flesh and came, and he's part of history, and he's fully God, fully man, and he had founded the Catholic Church, instituted it. And so he gave authority to his church. And so it's that infallibility that was imparted, a partial infallibility that was imparted to the church, that enables us to define the canon of Scripture and so on and so forth. So it's quite a different take on religion that we have as Catholics over against all the different Christian communities, because we have that authority. We claim that infallibility, whereas the other ones, they'll just have individual members that say, yes, I have the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's guiding me to interpret the Bible. But they wouldn't even have the Bible without the Catholic Church. And how are they interpreting infallibly with the Holy Spirit when they're disagreeing with their fellow Christians who also claim to be guided by the Holy Spirit in their infallible interpretation? So it just doesn't make any sense. And for me, if Catholicism is false, and it might be, if Catholicism is false, then all of Christianity is off the table for me. I'm going to scrap the whole thing, because the only religion that's philosophically tenable is Catholicism, and all of the other forms of Christianity, although they're very nice and they participate to some degree more or less in the truths of Catholicism, they're missing essential parts. So that's my perspective. I just thought I'd share it with you since you don't really know me.
No, and I dig that. And I got to give credit where credit's due. That just the fact that you're willing to say if it's false, and it might be. I mean, that right there is a huge step for most of the people I deal with. I mean, obviously, I deal with people like Kent Hovind or Ken Ham or, a bunch of other, I wouldn't call them, I struggle to just say Christians, because obviously most Christians don't hold the same values or views that they do. Most Christians don't fall under the taking the Bible literally. But even if they do, regardless, a lot of people will not, concede to that it might be false. And that's impressive. I got to give it to you.
Did you talk with Ken Ham?
No, I have not talked with Ken Ham. I've debated Kent Hovind twice. But no, I've just covered Ken Ham in some videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
Did
I've
you
not
reach
spoken
out?
with him.
You should reach out to him. Might be fun.
I have not, honestly. I didn't. Not that I don't want to. I would for sure. I just didn't. I didn't think he does that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, probably not. He's got a very different demeanor, different energy. I happen to like Kent Hovind. I think he's sort of a pain in the neck, and he's just like, I like him for the same reason I like Trump. Like, he's just a
Yeah, you said that.
He's a
I
pain
find
in
that
the neck.
interesting too. Like, so where do you fall? So obviously, as you said, you fall under that, young Earth creation belief.
Yeah.
Now, how does it differ, if it does, from Kent Hovind's belief? I mean, are you guys? Because obviously he's Christian. I don't know what denomination. He's Christian. You're Catholic. Is there differences? Like, do you guys disagree on anything?
Oh yeah. If you listen to the commentary, I did a commentary video on his interview, and I go through some outlining and highlighting some of the differences. He's a King James only guy.
Yes.
And he thinks that that's the perfect translation or whatever, and it's just, as I said in my recent video, it's just impossible to know what the original writings actually are. So the Protestant communities are in a quandary because they can't even define the canon without the Catholic Church, much less say this is the perfect, complete translation of God's word. So he and all Protestants are in a real quandary without the authority of the Catholic Church. But that's the most fundamental difference between myself and Kent Hovind. But in terms of young Earth creationism, I don't know exactly where we differ. Probably I would be a little bit more skeptical than he is. Like, he probably would be very confident saying this or that about the scientific record, the fossil record, and these sorts of things, and carbon dating and all those sorts of things. He probably has strong opinions, whereas I don't. I studied physics. I worked in quantum physics and astrophysics, and
Really?
So I know science. I've worked in hard science, but I don't have the same approach that Kent Hovind has, where he's excited about science. I'm not excited about science. I'm excited about philosophy. That's why I went into physics, thinking that I would learn about the nature of things and ultimate reality, but it turned out to just be sort of the fast train to working in industry and technology, which didn't excite me. So now I'm working in IT, and I ended up working in a construction company, but doing IT in a construction company. But when it comes to the natural sciences, I see a hierarchy in the sciences generally, and the natural sciences play a pretty low ranking role in the hierarchy of the sciences. I've got God, number one. God is knowledge. God is wisdom. God is that capital S science. And then you've got theology. And then you've got philosophy and the natural sciences underneath that. And if you look at the natural sciences, they start with axiomatic philosophical claims which cannot be tested. They cannot be tested in the laboratory. They cannot be tested. They just have to be taken as axiomatic. They're just assumptions that are reasonable, and they're self-evident. And so there are these philosophical underpinnings of the natural sciences. And that's actually how I came to believe in God, because I was an atheist for 25 years as an adult. And through my study of physics and philosophy, I came to understand that I am not God, and that necessarily there is one and only one subsistent being, and this necessary being is what everyone calls God. So I don't want to bore you with my story, but you can prod me
No,
with
no, it's
with
not
questions if
boring.
you want to. Yeah.
I am curious about, well, a few things, but no, it's definitely not boring. I find it fascinating, honestly. Like this mindset, I find fascinating. So let me first. Hmm. So what do you, just to try to find some common ground? Do you believe the universe is expanding as we observe it?
I don't really have an opinion. I take your word for it if that's what the consensus is. Whatever, sure.
Well, I mean, just to go back to where we discovered it, kind of Edwin Hubble in 1927, seen that the stars and galaxies are getting farther away. Now, if it's not expanding, I guess, what do you think is happening?
Well, I like I told you, I'm not terribly interested in the science, but I
Hmm.
did look at both sides of the cosmological model that's predominating today. And there's actually a Wolfgang Smith, I think his name is. He's a Catholic scientist and philosopher, and he works in astrophysics, cosmology in particular, and he's got a different model than the mainstream model. And I because I'm not terribly interested in the science, the natural science side, I can't really give a convincing argument or really take a firm stand one way or the other. My usual answer is I just don't really care that much. I don't care that much. I'm not that interested in, because my experience with natural science is that technology works, like the technology we're using for this conversation, it works, and the science behind it is repeatable, it's predictable. And so I always laugh at the atheists who come at me about quantum physics being some magical mystical realm, because it's not. It's just science. I mean, it's 100% predictable, and there are no violations to the principle of sufficient reason. There's always a sufficient reason for everything that happens on the large scale, the human scale, and on the quantum scale. It's always 100% reliable. That's how these devices work with quantum physics, right?
So is like just saying the universe expansion, the expanding of the universe, is it not reliable then? Is it not something that we can observe every day?
I don't know. I honestly I haven't looked into it, and if that's
No,
the
that's fair.
consensus, if that's the mainstream consensus, I'm happy to accept that. Whatever, redshift and all that sort of stuff. In every direction you look, you see the same redshifts. So therefore, it's just expanding. Like the analogy that's usually used is like raisin bread, a loaf of raisin bread. As the bread expands, each raisin will see the same expansion from any perspective. Pick any raisin, and they'll all see the same expansion. So that is the model that I grew up with. That's the model that I learned at school, at university, and I think that's the consensus.
It's
Um,
essentially, it's just interesting because so we know for sure. I mean, I would assume that you also. I mean, I know you're not that interested in it, but would fall under that light has a speed limit. Essentially, the speed
well,
of light
that's
is
that's
consistent
coming
within the universe, within space.
that's coming under question now. That is, yeah, that
Well,
is coming under
it
question.
kind of is, but at the same time, it's not light. I mean, light within the vacuum of space moves at there's a maximum speed to it. Now we can view things that expand faster than light, but that's space itself expanding. And that's kind of where it goes back to the expansion. But I guess I get it though. I sympathize with not being that interested in it. So let me see.
What I would say to sort of comfort you is that I do love the natural sciences, and I do love truth, and everything that's true in the natural sciences. I'm excited and happy that scientists are doing that hard, painful, meticulous work. And I've worked in the natural sciences. It's very boring. I find it very incredibly boring. Okay, so
That's
I'm
fair.
I'm happy that people they're doing the grind, and they're gathering the data and drawing their conclusions. And I'm very excited for the natural scientists to do their work. But I'm just personally not that excited about it. But I do value the work, and I do think people are seeking the truth, and they're finding the truth, and we're obviously improving with things like technology and stuff like that. But that's kind of the point I was making, is that when it comes to technology, that's where the rubber meets the road, and we know that we're making improvements, and that we're using science to help technology get better. But when it comes to things like evolution theory or cosmology, and certainly multiverses and all this sort of thing, there's a real overlap of philosophy and natural science, which goes undetected by the sort of layman who's not a professional scientist. You wouldn't necessarily notice where the philosophy comes in, and it's sort of masquerading as natural science. So what I often say is, if you pick up a popular book on the new physics, you're going to be all excited reading about it, but you won't realize maybe that the percentage of natural science in that book is very low, and it's mostly speculation. It's mostly story time, for adults. That's basically what it is, especially with evolution. Evolution is one of the most philosophically untenable theories, if you want to use that word, that I've ever encountered. It's pseudoscientific. I would say it's pseudoscientific.
No, see, I do, and I understand. I do. And I understand why people think that way. The issue is, so for me at least, where it comes down to is we do have evidence for evolution. We can stick with evolution. For one, you and I are amazing evidence for evolution, especially from where we started out, our species, and then go back to the species we originally came from. I know we don't agree with that. But the thing is, like, when it comes to religion and I guess even philosophy in a way, we don't have evidence. I mean, there is no evidence for example, to use just a general one that everyone will understand, for Noah's flood. That there's no evidence for that. There's no evidence that a wooden ship could even be built that big and survive that kind of cataclysmic condition of a worldwide flood. And I know the fossil record is iffy for people that believe that in this young Earth mindset, which I understand. But the thing is, it's not. I mean, if there was a worldwide flood, and if all the animals, dinosaurs included, and prehistoric, pre-dinosaurs, like single cell organisms, there wouldn't be these layers that we find from what we consider oldest to newest or youngest. And then there wouldn't be, bones and remains of animals fossilized that have clearly been eaten and chewed on and gnawed on. I mean, there's just a lot of it that I struggle with.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is, a lot of atheists and agnostics are obsessed with the evidence, the mountains of evidence that seem to support evolution from their point of view. Okay. But what you might not understand about me and my journey to God from atheism to theism, monotheism, and then from monotheism into Catholicism is a different story in and of itself. Okay. But chapter 1 is going from atheism, which included a lot of agnosticism, into monotheism, generic monotheism. It's a philosophical journey, and it actually does involve evidence, but it's the negation of all the evidence. It's the philosophical negation of all the evidence. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the radical doubt applied to your sense perceptions, your alleged sense apparatus. How do you know that the real world is real? How do you know that I am a separate being from you? You don't have any scientific way of testing that, much less proving that. So this is where the philosophical journey to God began for me, is doubting the other and the actual physical universe. I was a hard solipsist. I believed I was the God of Buddhism, the one mind of Buddha. I was a disembodied mind and the only mind, and it was a very lonely place to be. But that's hard solipsism. That's where I was along the journey of my philosophical studies. That's where I ended up. And then because I had dismissed all of the evidence, right? Like all the fossil record and all that was completely off the table because I had no basis whatsoever, scientifically or even philosophically, to justify belief in my own sense perception. So maybe respond to that. Where are you on that journey of sense perception and reality?
Now that is fascinating, because in a way I kind of will maybe not agree, because I don't know exactly how you feel about it, but that we are essentially all connected and part of one another. I mean, we all are made of the same thing that stars are made out of. We're all made out of the same thing that everything is made out of, essentially.
Right, but how do you know there are other things? How do you know there are other beings? How do you know there's a material universe? How do you know that this hand of yours, your hand, is not just a figment of your imagination?
And that is a fascinating thing to talk about. It is. Now, first, before I go into it, I am curious. Are you a fan of Alan Watts?
Was a huge fan. Huge fan.
Okay, I figured as much, because you have the talking points are kind of the same in that. Not saying that you're like copying him or anything. It's just he falls under that same mindset in a way. You know, that questioning, you know, what is real and what's not real, and I get that. And I guess I technically myself cannot, you know, prove to myself that me or you are real, that you're a different being from me, because I can't. Just like, and before I say this, please, anyone watching, please understand, I am not a flat earther. But the only thing I will concede, the only point I believe they have, is that if you have not been to space yourself, fair enough. You haven't seen the world for yourself. You technically can't prove that it is one way or another yourself. But obviously we can use all the evidence around and the actual pictures of the Earth and everything. And yes, you could say, well, it could be fake, could be CGI, whatever, blah, blah. That doesn't matter. So I do concede that. I understand what you're saying, that technically myself, I cannot prove, for example, you're real. Other than I can prove that other people, at least in my life, are real. And now I can't say I'm not imagining them. I can't say that I'm not in some padded cell right now, you know, out of my mind on all the best of psychiatric drugs. But what you know, just like anyone else, I can use the evidence around me and what I assume is a physical world. And I get that with that's I guess where the philosophical side of things do come in. But that's also why I do have not an issue with philosophy. It's just an issue with trying to tie philosophy and what you call natural science together. Because at the end of the day, philosophy is basically just asking questions and doubting what, you know, we think we know, which is fair. You should doubt what you think we know. You should question things. But there does have to be a point at which questioning things is going to be more detrimental to the progression of humanity.
Well, have you ever played chess, or you ever played any logic games or puzzles or anything like that where you use pure reason, right? It's like you can be laying in bed in a dark room and working on a chess problem, or you could be working on an enigma or you know, one of these tricky puzzles in your head, in your mind, using your mind's eye to solve a logical problem. You can do that, and a lot of people do that. Okay, so this is called pure reason, and we have the light of reason, and we can do reduction to absurdity tests where we eliminate all the possibilities but one, and that one remaining option is necessarily true if our thinking is correct, if our premises are correct, and if our reasoning is proper and the conclusion follows. Then we can advance in knowledge. And this is a large part of theoretical physics and other natural sciences, where they use pure reason without going into a laboratory. There are lots and lots of examples of that. My favorite example of that is actually proving that the acceleration due to gravity is constant. You can use that. You don't need a laboratory. You can do it all with thought experiments. Okay, so I want to caution you against dismissing reason as being less valuable than the laboratory. Reason is, I would argue, more important, because we can't do natural science and observational empirical science without the foundation that's provided by pure reason. So I do have rationalistic tendencies, and it is Rene Descartes that brought me to God, I have to admit. He brought me out of my hard solipsism. But so I'm aware of my bias. My bias is towards rationalism, reason, pure reason. And I was actually an atheistic Satanist before my conversion to God. And atheistic Satanism is a rationalistic religion. It's a rationalistic view where reason is king and reason is God. And
Not to cut you off, but I am curious. How could you be atheist and Satanist?
because atheistic Satanism denies the existence of both God and Satan and all that alleged fairy tale stuff, and it focuses on the self-will, self-determination, and the elevation of reason. So things like natural science are elevated in that worldview, and things like it has sort of an existential component to it where you make your own reality, you make your own meaning in life. So I don't know if you know about existential philosophy, but that's basically the Coles Notes version of it. Like, there is no meaning, there is no value, so we will import or create meaning and value just by the choices we make and the way we live our lives. But
Okay. I just haven't heard that. I didn't, for me, it sounded like you believed in Satan, but that's why I was confused. I understand.
No, yeah. It's a popular form. It's very, very popular worldview today, atheistic Satanism. If you've heard about Anton LaVey or Aleister Crowley, these are big names in atheistic Satanism. Crowley may have actually come to believe in God and Satan, I think, later in life. I'm not sure about that. I would need to look into it. But yeah, it's the elevation of one's own will. And I want to ask you, actually, if you believe in free will and you believe in reason, because this is what characterizes a human being.
Free will?
Yeah.
No.
You don't believe in free will?
No, there's no such thing.
Okay.
No, and don't like, I do have to give that a caveat, of course. I'm not saying that the universe is on a determined path or anything like that, because the universe is basically chaos. What I'm saying is people assume that they have much more free will than you actually do. Your brain overrides a lot of your choices. Your subconscious determines a lot of your decision making. People think they make decisions, and you do kind of, but really it's your subconscious doing it. Consciously, there's no real free will. I mean, I'm not saying we can't make decisions. I'm not even saying that you can't go against your subconscious or your instinct or whatever. You can. But for the most part, your subconscious will determine a lot of what you do before you ever do.
I think we have very little free will, but it's significant. It's significant. It's very significant in my worldview, because it basically tells you if you're going to go to heaven or hell, like based on the choices you make. Even though there aren't that many that are truly free, there are always constraints, there are always restrictions. But I want to ask you about your worldview, like you're agnostic and whatever, but is there any possibility of a difference between the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for you, given the example that I've just given you about heaven and hell? Those are drastically different.
Oh, do you mean after I die?
Yeah, just the outcome, whatever that might be. Like, you might believe in multiverses and reincarnation. I don't know what you believe, but is there any difference when all the dust settles and you as an individual person and I as an individual person, we can end up in different places? How different are the different outcomes, the possible differences between those outcomes? Is it a drastic one like heaven and hell, or is it just we're all going to be food for the worms and it's exactly the same outcome for every person?
Well, exactly the same. It's going to depend on how you die, of course. But no, your energy, the energy of your body essentially will transfer, but your actual physical being won't. Now, that being said, of course, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know if there's something after this. I lean more towards there isn't, just because I haven't seen any kind of reasonable evidence for the contrary. That being said, if somebody was to show me some, it still wouldn't change most likely how I live life. It depends exactly. If there's 100% definite, Catholicism's real, heaven and hell, 100% real, then yeah, maybe I'll try to be, I guess, better than I try to be now. But at the same time, I don't try to be good or bad based on what I think will happen after I die. I mean, like most people, even religious people, I try to do good or bad depending on what is the moment at hand. I mean, my biggest thing is not living for, a tomorrow you don't know will exist or not. You live for right now because that's what matters is right now. This conversation's real. This is what matters. Anything beyond that, that's just guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I have a question. It's a little bit off topic, but
No, go ahead.
I'm wondering, like, because I always say to the atheist,
And real quick, feel free to, I guess, treat me, as an atheist, because even though I do claim,
de facto atheist,
even though I do claim I don't know, if I had to choose, if I had to pick theism or atheism, I would definitely go for atheism just because I see no evidence for theism. Yeah. But beyond that, I still stick in the middle. But either way, feel free to.
You're 100% definitely a de facto atheist, okay, or what we call a practical atheist. And if you become a monotheist, you're going to be shouting it from the rooftops, and everyone's going to know, and you're going to be annoying the hell out of everyone because you're going to be so happy to be a monotheist. That's always the case. There are people that go through that experience, by the way, and they go back to their atheism. I don't know how that happens, but there's one guy, he's got a popular YouTube channel, Nathan Ormond. I had him on as a Christian, and then he went back to being an atheist. Nathan Ormond, what's his name? He does his handle is something catchy, something philosophical or something. Anyway, you can look him up. But I wanted to ask you about your identity, because, you probably see yourself and me and everything around us as different configurations of this matter energy stuff in this universe. And so I'm just wondering what makes you, you, what makes me from your perspective, if we're just a configuration of matter energy and space-time, basically. And how does your identity persist even though you started out as a single cell zygote in your mother's womb, hopefully? I hope that's how you started. And you'll end up old and gray, hopefully. You don't know if tomorrow is going to be given to you, but like you said, but hopefully you'll get old and gray if that's God's will for you. But how do you maintain your you-ness or your identity in this whole big journey from single cell up until today? You've got like trillions of cells, right?
Yeah, well, for one, no, I was actually created in a test tube, very unique, and I'll probably die within 10 years if all goes to plan. Oh. But anyway, so the identity thing, I feel most people put a lot of stock into being unique or being themselves. And the thing is, like, you don't have a choice. No, but as much as we are the same, as much as we are all human beings, all created from the same basic, materials, if you will, we're vastly different for many different reasons. I mean, we have, of course, our, upbringing or our, surroundings that change us. And then we have our minds, which are the most important differentiators between us. The brains are beyond complicated. I mean, they're essentially just an entanglement of connections that one little thing out of place or put into a different way can lead to a change that is unmeasurable, essentially. But at the same time, even though I say that, there are people that will have vastly different upbringings and obviously different bodies, but are still very similar. And there are people that will have very similar upbringings, twins, if you will, that are, they're raised in the same home, raised by the same people, brought up essentially the same, even down to the DNA level, almost the same, but they're very different. I mean, that's the thing that I just don't, it's not that I don't think it's important. It's just, it's a topic of trying to, how do I put it in a more, I guess, easier to explain way? It's like trying to determine the difference between, have you ever watched The Office?
Oh yeah, I love it.
All right. So that scene where Pam gives two identical pictures to Creed and says, corporate wants you to find the differences between these pictures. Those pictures are obviously the same, but they're not the same technically. They're two different pieces of paper. Just that one being printed in the next one means that second one has ever so slightly less ink than the first one, potentially, depending on how the printer is and the technology behind it. But that's not the point. It's that thing that even though we can look at ourselves as same as you want or as different as we want, it doesn't matter, because we all are different and we all are very similar. It's tomatoes. I mean, there are endless differences between us, and there's endless similarities between us.
Right, but let's pretend you're the only being in the universe and you always have been. It's still the case that you are changing. Your configuration of matter, energy, and space-time is constantly changing. So it brings to mind the philosophical conundrum of the ship. You take a wooden ship and you replace one plank of wood, and then it's still the same ship. And then you replace the next plank of wood and it's still the same ship, and you keep going until every single scrap of wood in this boat has been replaced and it's still the same ship. That's you. Okay, that's what you are. You're just constantly changing. So what is the you-ness? What is it that makes you? Why are you still you, even though you keep changing? You keep swapping out all your matter energy. If that's all you are, is a certain set of configurations of matter, energy, and space-time, then, I mean, you would have to concede, you would have to admit that I can make another you just by making that arrangement.
No, absolutely not. Because that was my kind of point there, that even though that part is true, that's not all we are. We are our upbringing. We are our environment. And we also, more importantly, are our mind. And our minds are an endless entanglement of just information. And to say that you could carbon copy me, you might be able to physically, but you could never carbon copy me and then bring it up in the same exact way that I was brought up. It's not possible anymore, because I'm here now.
If I look at you right now, we take a snapshot of you right now. If we had the technology to get the exact configuration of matter, energy, including all the spin, upspin, downspin of every quark and everything else, all your neurons, how they're firing, how they're in the middle of firing or about to fire or just fired or whatever, we have all of that and we just reproduce it. Would you admit that that's you, and that is you with all your current background and history and emotional life and everything?
That's where I disagree, is that you couldn't have me with my background.
Is there some non-tangible thing, or is it all just configuration of matter energy?
Well, the untangible part of it is your environment, your upbringing. That's your life experiences.
And how is that stored today? How is that stored? It's stored in your brain?
It is.
Okay, so I reproduce that. When I reproduce your brain, I reproduce that. You
can reproduce what's in my brain, but you can't reproduce the experiences that a brain went through. You can reproduce the memories, but again, you have to remember that memories are also nonsense. I mean, they're all interpreted and they change as life goes on. But you can't take something today and bring it up with the same experiences that I've had in the past, because the past has already happened.
I know, but your state right now, your state of mind, the state of your brain, that is containing all your life experience, all your memories, right? And you're claiming, I think falsely and erroneously, foolishly, that that's just a material configuration of matter, energy, and space-time, and you call it a brain and a nervous system and a memory and memory banks and all these sorts of things. But you seem to want to hold on to some mystical, magical, non-physical realm or component of your being, which flies in the face of, or contradicts at least, your simultaneous claim that you are nothing but a particular configuration of matter, energy, and space-time.
I do understand what you're getting at. I do. I'm more being, difficult and a little pedantic, but no, I do get it. It's just, I don't think it's mystical or magical. It's just experience is a non-physical thing that you can't necessarily reproduce. I do understand that it is all stored in the brain, but the thing is the brain. Okay.
Wouldn't you just admit that you have a soul, an immaterial soul, as my religion teaches? Wouldn't it just be easier
see that
to
I can't admit, because I have no evidence for a soul.
You do. Your memories, your experiences are irreproducible, and you continue to be you, even though you were started as a single cell and you went through baby and child,
Well, even
adolescent.
though memories and experiences are, in my opinion, not reproducible, it's the thing that I don't consider that necessarily being a soul. It's just that's time. That's something that's happened in the past, and you can't recreate something that's happened in the past because it was in the past. But I mean, I get what you're saying. If we had the technology to perfectly carbon copy every single memory and
Yeah.
life experience I've had,
Yeah.
then technically, yes, you would, I guess, have a carbon copy of me. Now, would I say it's different than me? I would still say that, yes, it's different than me, simply because the moment it comes to existence, our life experiences are on different paths now. I mean, even if you keep them as parallel and similar as possible, they're still different. And so that will change. And we might, now in that very moment, yes, we might be exactly the same. But I cannot concede to a soul without, some kind of evidence of one.
Well, if I were to just go with a thought experiment, if I were to hit pause on time, so time stops, and I replace each and every elementary particle that's part of your body, each and every one gets replaced with an identical one, but a different one. So an electron is an electron is an electron. Maybe you're not particularly attached to your electrons, right? Can we swap them out, or is it going to change who you are? Like, this is the basic idea. So I'm not going to clone you. I'm just going to hit pause, and I'm going to replace each and every material part of you with the exact same component, but one from over here, not from, and I'm going to swap it out. So do you think that would change you?
Well, I mean, for one, I think it would for sure, because you can't, recreate every little particle. I mean, the moment you create a new one, it's automatically different. I mean, it's not, but at the same time, just, with the thought experience, yes, if you were to recreate everything perfectly, if that was even feasible, then technically we would be, the same. We would be two identical copies of myself. I mean, that I will concede. The thing is, like, I guess I don't know. See, the soul thing bugs me because now, well, let me ask first. Do you believe humans are the only living creatures with souls?
No.
Or, okay, so animals then have souls too.
Yeah.
Now, where does that stop? Do insects have souls?
Yes. Insects are animals.
No, that's fair. That's what I'm just wondering. Plants?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so plants have souls.
Yeah.
So now what I'm curious about, do you believe we're the only form of life in the universe?
Of course not. You just mentioned animals and insects and plants. They're all alive. The difference.
No, I know, but I mean, other than planet Earth.
The difference, I just want to specify the difference with the human. What makes the human a unique animal is that we are endowed with free will and reason, whereas the beasts don't have free will and reason. Okay, that's the Catholic teaching, and that's the philosophical understanding.
What are the beasts?
Non-human animals.
So, so humans are animals, though. Like you do. That's fine. Okay, thank you. As not everyone believes that. I mean,
in terms of life in outer space, I don't believe that there's any life on other planets. No.
Really? So no life on any other planet?
No.
So now for a thought experiment.
Sure.
If we do find life on other planets, does it have a soul?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So then how does that not kind of, I guess, contradict what the Bible teaches?
Hold on now. I misunderstood your question. So I will qualify my answer by saying there might be life out there, but not human life. We won't find.
Well,
and we won't find rational and free animals like, aka humans, on other planets. Are there plants on other planets out there? Sure, why not? Are there like beasts or whatever, non-human animals out there? Maybe.
Well, no, and that's fine. But again, I just want to stick with the soul part of it, because you did say animals do have souls.
Yeah.
So these other beings, regardless of how intelligent or unintelligent or advanced they are.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying they're humans or whatever, even human-like if they want to be, or just a simple piece of grass.
Yeah.
So wouldn't the existence of that being out there and that having a soul, like how does that not go against what the Bible teaches? That's what I don't understand.
Because you to merit heaven or hell, you need to have a rational soul that's endowed with free will. To be able to have morality, to have responsibility, we need to have free will. We need to be able to choose freely, at least sometimes, right?
See, that's interesting to me too, is the morality part.
Yeah.
Is your claim, and I know this is going off topic, but I do find that super fascinating. Is your claim that morality cannot exist without religion?
No, of course not. I mean, you have morality because you live in a universe, from my perspective, that is a religious universe. It's a godly universe. It's a universe made by God and sustained by God.
So do animals have morality?
No.
The beast?
No.
So then why do animals, especially something somewhat advanced, like say, ape-like animals, chimpanzees, whatever, why do they have social structures? Why do they have, clear, visible signs of guilt? And
well, they have instinct. They have instinct. And like you said, and we agreed early on in this interview, we both agreed that we don't have a lot of free will. You think it's zero. I think it's non-zero. But
I don't think it's zero.
Oh, you don't think it's zero? Okay,
no. I was just saying, like I said, I believe we can override our instinct or subconscious, but I also believe that animals can as well.
Yeah. The difference is instinct versus free will. Like there's an instinct that humans have. I'm sure you've witnessed it. I'm sure you've witnessed it in yourself, an instinct. And you mentioned it actually psychologically when they've done those studies, when you think consciously, you think you've made a choice, but it was made before you were conscious of the choice. So I'm sure you're aware of these instincts that we have. And the animals have that, and it's very touching and beautiful to watch because God is the author of all creation, including a puppy dog or a kitten or a giraffe or whatever. And these are beautiful creatures, and they show us the beauty of God, and they care for their young, and they like food, and they like sex, and they like all the things we like. But as humans, we need to rise above the beastly pleasure seeking and reflect on life and reflect on our Creator. And that's what makes us different from the animals. But the animals are beautiful and they have souls, but they don't merit heaven or hell. I mean, they'll all be in heaven if that's what God wants. So if you have a pet and you're worried about not seeing it in heaven, don't worry. God can put it there, no problem, because it can't merit hell.
Definitely not worried about that. But what I guess I was curious about now is, so take a dog, for example.
Sure.
Now, the claim that a dog doesn't see a God is fair.
No. I think the animals are aware of God.
They're aware of God?
Yeah, but not in a self-reflective way. There are many passages in the Bible that talks about all of creation being aware of God, including the rocks and the trees and the animals, the lower animals.
The rocks?
Yeah.
What do you mean the rocks?
It's part of God's creation. So there's not an awareness like you and I have an awareness, but this may be poetic language in the Bible when it talks about everything in creation acknowledging God and to a certain extent giving glory to God. And so it may well be poetic language, but I'm sure that the relationship between, for example, a domestic animal like a dog and God, I'm sure there's a relationship there. Because God cares, like it says in the Bible in the New Testament, that God cares about the little bird that drops dead from the sky. And if he cares about the little bird, obviously he cares about humans who are infinitely more valuable than a bird, right? But God does love the bird.
Why are humans more valuable than a bird?
We're more godlike. We have free will and reason. We're made in the image and likeness of God, which means that we have free will and reason. That's what it means to be made in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah. See, that's definitely something we're going to differ on. Is I do not consider humans above any other life form on the planet.
Of course,
simply because, for one, look at what we've done to the planet. But not even that. We wouldn't exist without the other life forms. Our ecosystem would collapse completely.
Yeah.
So I can't say we're more important. If anything, we're very detrimental to the planet. But even if we aren't, even if we figure out a way to not kill off the planet as we're trying to, it seems, we need the other life forms.
Of course,
they're very important.
Of course,
if anything, more important. Like I said, without them, our endeavor to kill off this planet would happen even faster.
Yeah, that's why there's a Christian ecology where we have stewardship over God's creation, and we're not supposed to obviously pollute, and we want clean water, clean air. We don't want to be poisoning the village down the river, right? That's not Christian. So there's a Christian ecology which is not being respected by, I would say, 99.999% of big businesses, period. And if you interview the CEO and they say, yes, I'm Christian, I go to church every week. Okay, well, you got some improvements to make, right? Because
well, I would caveat that with just by 99.99% of people.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
all of us, we don't respect or care for the world or the life that's in it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, just the simple fact that we're having a conversation on these computers is great evidence of that. But what I guess I'm a little more, I want to kind of jump over a little bit to, it pertains to life, is, so as a young earth creationist, you believe that Noah's flood happened about 4,000 years ago, yes?
Something like that.
So how does that work? Because I mean, I asked Hovind, and he just, he gish gallops around and avoids questions, but you answer questions, and I truly appreciate this because this is fascinating to me. I mean, it really is. And feel free to always, if I ever ask something, I mean, interrupt and go to another question if you need to. I don't care, and even in the after an explanation. But like, so how do we have life forms, plants, trees that are older than that? That doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. I mean, you would need to convince me, first of all, of the, the secular mainstream scientific point of view. Like, hey, this tree is 10,000 years old. Like, I believe the whole universe is less than 10,000 years old. So if you wanted to show me like scientific evidence that this tree is 20,000 years old, or whatever this turtle is. I don't know what's the oldest living thing we have. Like maybe it's a tree.
Well, there are trees that are, definitely over 4,000 years old. And that was because, I mean, if it was under a worldwide flood, it would not be alive anymore. And there's definitely civilizations older than 10,000 years. And not only that, if we want to go to space, there's, stars that are farther than 10,000 light years away.
Yeah, I haven't been convinced of any civilization older than 7,000 years. I'm not convinced of that. And
well, doesn't that in itself disprove it? I mean, because the world's only supposed to be 6,000 years old.
No, it's, I don't know, 6,000, 7,000, whatever it is. I mean, whatever it is, I don't have evidence of civilizations older than 6,000 or 7,000 years old. I have not been convinced, and I've seen a lot of pop presentations about this. It's not my wheelhouse, so I don't really know. I haven't looked into it too deeply. If you have like really astonishing evidence of old civilizations, you can certainly send it to me and I'll take a look at it. I am open-minded, but I've seen a lot of the stupid History Channel nonsense about ancient civilizations and all this sort of thing, and they always stop short of 6,000, 7,000 years. It's always around that ballpark. That's as far back as they go. And then there's speculation about earlier stuff. But in terms of the starlight or whatever, doesn't bother me. Like, just like Adam was created full grown, and the wine at Cana, like Jesus turned the water into wine. The wine looked like it had matured, like the grapes grew up and then they were fermented, and there was that process that took time, right? But no, it was created right there and then by God Almighty, the God-man Jesus Christ, and it just looked like it had a history. So it's interesting there were 6 jugs of wine to reflect the 6 days of creation.
See, I guess that's where I struggle with it too, is that anytime I have to go, or you have to go into the past and invoke some kind of miracle, such as, creating wine or creating a human fully formed, that's where I completely lose it. It's just, there's no science there at all. I mean, that's just not
what does the
science.
This is the problem with the naturalist point of view. It's like, why is there something rather than nothing? Where did everything come from? Like, if you believe in the Big Bang, for example, which I don't, obviously, if you believe in the Big Bang, and that is coming under scrutiny now too, in the mainstream community, if you believe in the Big Bang, you would have to ask yourself scientific explanation for the singularity, right?
Well, yes, and we try to figure that out, but we don't know exactly. There is a scientific theory behind it that, everything did come from a singularity, but as Carl Sagan pointed out, what if it didn't? What if everything was just here already?
Yeah.
It wouldn't change what we see and observe today.
Well, there is that little problem of entropy, right? The second law of thermodynamics. Like we know there's a certain.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, under your worldview, that wouldn't matter.
Yeah, under my worldview, none of the science really matters at all. None of it matters.
See, and that's where I do struggle, because it's like we use science to figure out the world, and to me, see, I guess I've always fallen under this, that we don't know exactly, what the Big Bang was or is, or even if it is a thing. We have a lot of evidence. We have a lot of theories, scientific theories, to explain it, but we don't know 100%. And we definitely have basically no idea what was before the Big Bang. Yeah. We, once again, theories, of course. And so for me, if there is a God or a godlike being, it would make way more sense that he or it simply kickstarted the Big Bang. It kickstarted the universe and then let everything happen naturalistically, if you will. Because the problem is, once you invoke these miracles, then all of science crumbles, and we have no way to explain how we're here today, or where we came from, or
but God created
anything.
God created nature to be natural, and he was not frustrated in his desire
but
to
he
make
didn't.
It natural.
He definitely didn't
natural.
Under your worldview. Because if he created it to be natural, then the world would not be 6,000 years old. All animal, because at least as far as we understand natural, none of that's true then. And that's where I struggle.
A lot of Catholics especially believe in the Big Bang, and God just kicked it off and he made evolution happen and all this sort of thing. It's completely philosophically untenable. It's a real compromise that these Catholics have made to the secular scientific community, because they want to fit in. They don't want to be looked at like they're kook, right? They want to fit in. They want to be normal. They want to be liked.
Well, see, fit in, I struggle with that word, because in my opinion, it's the fact that they're willing to admit that their interpretation or literal interpretation of the Bible was wrong. And that's the biggest thing that in science they do, that they're happy to be wrong. Being wrong is celebrated. To whereas a fundamentalist, like a literal interpreter of the Bible, not only doesn't want to be wrong, they essentially think they can't be, for the most part. And that's where I struggle with, because being wrong is great. I mean, that's how we learn. Yeah.
My Christianity is a faith-based set of beliefs. So there's a whole bunch of beliefs that are faith-based. I could be wrong, okay? But my monotheism is what you need to understand. My monotheism is not faith-based. It's based on reason. And philosophically, you can be a philosophical monotheist, which I was after my conversion, because I hated Christianity, so I didn't want to be a Christian, and it took me a while to come around. But my conversion was a philosophical conversion, and I had applied radical doubt to absolutely everything. All the evidence that you keep talking about, all of that evidence was thrown out because I could not trust my sense perceptions. I had no basis for trusting my sense perceptions until I found that I'm not God, that God is God. So once I had established monotheism, then of course I was able to accept God's creation and all of the science, and science is good. As I said earlier in this interview, science is very good, and science does matter to the extent that it glorifies God and that we use it in a godly way. But science doesn't matter nearly as much or in the same way as the godless scientists think it matters, because what's first and foremost, obviously, is to know God, to love God, and to serve God in this life so we can be happy with him in the next life. But science, just like everything else in life, is important. Ironing your clothes is important. Brushing your teeth is important. All these things are important. Drinking enough water, like all these things. Everything about life, this natural life that we live here, is important, but we have to realize there's a supernatural component to our life as well. I hope you'll come back. I hate to end the conversation. I really do hate it. But as I told you, I've got this soiree that's hooked up, and it's a bunch of anti-vaxxers. We get together once in a while, so we're going to go complain about the government.
Fair enough. Well, it
So
was definitely interesting.
will you come back and talk to me, and we'll dig deeper into philosophy, metaphysics, and
Yeah, just
religion?
shoot me an email anytime. I'm pretty much always free. So
Excellent. I really appreciate it, and very nice to meet you. I do apologize for ending.
no, no, it's okay. I had a great time. It was interesting.
And we you have now you know me a little bit better. You can think of some questions
Hmm.
to dig a little bit deeper next time we talk, and maybe during the Christmas holidays or something like that. I've got 2 weeks off, so my schedule is more open. So we'll see how it goes. But please take care, and it's a real pleasure to meet you. You're a very nice young man, and as I mentioned, you look like a famous actor. What was his name? Nicholas Cage.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate meeting you, and it was a pleasure talking with you, and we'll do it
it
again
was a
soon.
pleasure as well. Thank you for having me on.
Take good care, my friend.
You too.
Bye.